Let's go. The basic requirements for an offer include all right. Got a good mix in there. So yeah, objective intent is the right answer. Remember, subjective intent is like essentially it's not what do you call it? Subjective intent is what a person is thinking, not the actual objective. So subjective is thought intent. So anything that says subjective intent is not part of an offer, is not part of a basic requirement. And Ali, I saw you jumped in the room. You'll see we're playing Kahoot. You can go to kahoot.it. The game pin is at the bottom of your screen. So if you want to hop in there, you can and join in.
Got it. Thank you.
All right. A seller gave her agent a check for getting her house sold so quickly. What must the salesperson do with the check? All right. Yep. Give the check to the broker. You're allowed to be paid extra. You know, that's fine. It's just a matter of any payment any payment from a real estate transaction must go through your brokerage. You have to be paid by the brokerage. So if you get an extra check or any kind of extra money, you have to then turn it over to the broker, and then the broker will pay you. So it has to go into their account and then out of their account to you. For those of you just joining, we are playing Kahoot. You can join by going to kahoot.it or using the Kahoot app. Here is the pin at the bottom of the screen to join the game. We are doing the exam practice test. So we're just going to be rolling through this and doing as much as we can. We got 100 questions. A broker lists a home. This agreement can be terminated by all of the following except. All right. Yes, death of a salesperson. So remember, they said accept. So you got to be careful on these questions when they say not or accept or any of those things, because they use that to kind of trip you up, because you're looking at it saying this agreement can be terminated, but then you forget the accept part. So yes, all of those things except the death of a salesperson, because salespeople are not part of the agreement. It is between the seller and the broker. So the broker and the seller are the only two people in the agreement. The salesperson is not. Even though you may have signed the agreement, you are signing on behalf of the brokerage. So it is an agreement between the broker and the seller. So death of a salesperson would not count. Anybody who's just joined, again, kahoot.it. Use the game pin, and you'll be able to join in and play. All right. Okay. The buyers had no idea there were different ways to take ownership title. They need your help. You should. Way to go. Advising to ask their attorney. You cannot give unsolicited legal advice. Julia's on fire. A seller dies during a 90-day listing agreement. What is true? So this one got some people. So if the seller dies, the agreement is terminated by operation of law. So it's not in full force because the agreement is between the seller and the broker. So remember, the salesperson isn't part of the agreement. If the seller or the broker dies, or the broker goes bankrupt, or those kind of things, that makes the agreement terminated. So the agency agreement is not in full force. It is terminated by operation of law because it then goes into probate. So yeah, operation of law, it would be terminated if the seller dies. All right. Okay. Again, Kahoot.it, game pen here at the bottom. Join up, play along. That way it becomes more fun and more interesting. From where does the real estate licensee get the 19 articles of the canons of ethics? Some split there. Yes, it is the commission. So we had some people say National Association of Realtors, Division of Real Estate. So National Association of Realtors is the code of ethics. Remember, canons over codes. If it's legally binding, then it's the canons, and that is with the commission. And you got to remember, the division sets up your licensing. The commission enforces the rules. So, when you're talking about anything that has the rules or enforcement, it's going to be the commission. And so the canons are with the commission, and canons over codes. Canons will beat codes any day. And so the code is with the National Association of Realtors and your board of realtors. Canons are with the commission. Oh, some movement on the board. Nice. In a suit brought under the Federal Fair Housing Law as amended, punitive damages may be as much as That's right. Be careful. There is no limit on the punitive damages. So just know that there is no limit. Hey, Nally, hopefully you'll be able to get in this time. I saw you try getting in a minute ago. I don't know what happened. What are known cancer-causing agents called? Way to go. Carcinogens. Way to go. All right. Fewer buyers in a higher price range would create what kind of pressure on housing prices? This one's stumping you guys. Downward. So for those of you that answered and for those of you that didn't, where was the, so let's talk about that. Fewer buyers, it's supply and demand. So if the demand is for something is low, so buyers are the demand and inventory or houses are the supply. If the demand is low, then the prices would have to come down because prices go up when demand is high and supply is low, which is what we're in right now. Inventory is low and supply and demand has been high, which is why houses are so expensive right now. So fewer buyers, less demand means lower prices on supply. So same thing is true if there, like I said, if there were more buyers and less supply, then it would go upward. So downward when fewer, upward when more. Was that helpful? Hopefully. Who approves the governor's appointments to the Real Estate Commission? All right, the state Senate, yes. Commerce Committee of the State House. Now, it's the Senate. Governor, when you think of the governor, think of the Senate. So, yeah, state Senate. What lien automatically attaches to a commercial property to secure a broker's commission? All right, broker's lien. And follow-up question, can a broker's lien be put on residential property? I'll keep an eye on the chat, or you can take yourself off mute. Can a broker's lien be put on residential property? I got a yes. I got yeses. And I got a no from Sharita. And Sharita would be correct. No. Broker's liens are only for commercial. So only commercial property would a broker's lien be attached to. And again, if it's about a broker's commission, it's a broker's lien. Just it's an easy one to remember. Broker's lien on commercial. If the broker is missing, securing their commission on a commercial property, they put a broker's lien on it. So it's in the name. And if anybody's not in the group, Kahoot.it game pin is here at the bottom. Feel free to hop in. The rate of commission that may be charged on the sale of improved property is right. All right. We had some people that jumped in. So the same thing that they're talking about right now, those big lawsuits that are happening out there under the Sherman antitrust, because the way NAR says that buyer's agents must be paid part of the commission, they're saying that violates the Sherman Antitrust Act. So anytime that you say that there's a standard that someone must use this commission rate or anything else, that there's a standard, you are creating a Sherman antitrust violation. So just know that you are never allowed to do that. It is whatever the agreement is between that seller and the brokerage. So the property owner and the brokerage set the commission. Everywhere else, whether they say it's a standard or whatever, they're not allowed to do that. So that's Sherman antitrust. And that's the lawsuit that's being put out there right now between NAR and just got settled by, a couple different brokerage for, 50 million and $80 million, I believe. So don't violate that. Don't talk about commissions. Don't compare commissions, especially online. What protected group is covered under the Ohio Civil Rights Law, but not under the federal Civil Rights Law of 1968? Yes, ancestry. So handicap is covered. So is national origin and sex. So it's only ancestry that would not be covered under the federal civil rights law. And I don't know if you all remember, I put that, or for those of you that were here, hang on a second. Fresh corn. Civil rights. Oh, 1968. So fair housing, fresh corn. Let's see. Acronym. All right, there we go. So familiar status, race, ethnicity, sex, handicap. Yeah. So color, place, color, religion, national origin. So yeah. So that's fresh corn. So if you want to look that up and put that in, that's a great way to remember the 1968 fair housing or civil rights law is fresh corn. It covers, all the different groups. And so you can use that to remember that ancestry is not part of it because there's no A. Which of the following features is most likely to be the cause of an adjustment to a comparable when preparing a CMA? That's right, busy street. Never demographics. Demographics would get you in a lot of trouble. So don't ever use that in a CMA comparison. We don't talk about schools. We don't talk about demographics, whether a neighborhood is good or bad. So never that. Just know that will get you in a lot of trouble for steering or, things like that. So be very careful of that. All right. Hope's mortgage created a lien against the property she purchased. With the mortgage, what kind of lien is this?
Voluntary.
There you go. All right, good job. Voluntary. Rhonda with the streak. How many hours of continuing education are required by an Ohio licensee over a 3-year reporting period?
$35.
It is 30. Yeah, so it's 30 hours over 3 years. So it's 10 hours a year, essentially. Some things you'll just have to remember. 30 hours over 3 years is the requirement. The fee for renewing a broker's license is... I never understood why they asked this question to people who are getting agent's license. Most people don't get a broker's license. Yeah, $243. Who knows what the fee is for a salesperson's license?
$149.
It's not on this list. Salesperson's license would be $182 every 3 years. It's your first birthday after you get licensed. And the interesting thing is, it doesn't matter if you got licensed the day before. If your birthday falls the next day, you would have to renew and pay the $182. It's your first birthday after you get licensed, and then every 3 years after that. So if you're getting licensed close to your birthday, maybe wait a day or a week. A property is valued at $100,000 and is taxed at 45 mils. The assessment rate on the property is 35%. The yearly tax is... All right. There you go. Now, who actually did that math? The amount a broker may charge for a commission is... I was going to say, you guys should get this quick. We just went over this. There you go. So again, nowhere is it allowed to be stated how much you can charge for your commission. It would be Sherman Antitrust if it's anywhere. It is negotiable between the seller and the broker. That is it. Can't be discussed anywhere else. It can't be, set, nothing. What would be considered evidence of the agency relationship between broker and buyer?
Buyer broker contract.
That would be correct. So agency disclosure statement is just letting it, I understand why you would say that would be evidence of agency, but the evidence of the relationship is the agreement between the broker and the agent. The disclosure is just a disclosure statement saying who the agent works for, and that's it has to be submitted prior to making an offer, or it has to be signed prior to making an offer. In most states, the listing broker has a fiduciary duty to the That's right, the client. The fiduciary duty is never to the customer. A customer is not a client. So a customer does not have an agency relationship with the broker. And same thing with the buyer. If it's the listing broker, they're working with the seller. So remember, listing broker means they're working with the seller. So their fiduciary responsibility in this term would be the client, not the buyer, the customer. A meeting of the minds refers to the offer and acceptance. Yes. So we had closing of a contract. I can see that. I can see why you would think that. The meeting of the minds is just at the offer and acceptance of the contract. The closing isn't where they agreed. So just think where they actually agreed was the offer and acceptance. That's where they negotiated and agreed on terms. Closing just means that they followed through with those terms. A lump sum payment of principal is due at the end in which type of promissory note? A balloon. So remember, fully amortized means that there's no lump sum payment. It means that it's amortized over the life. Each payment, if paid, pays the entire principal and interest down, and the last payment completes all payments. So it's just, a steady payment of the whole thing, which means that the loan is fully amortized. Balloon means that you make payments, and it's usually a lower payment, and then at the end you pay the balance, and so that's why it's a lump sum payment at the end. What must be contained in the HUD fair housing poster? Yep. Address to the Ohio Division of Real Estate. So what else do we have? Explanation of the Ohio Fair Housing. You would think so, right? And again, HUD is national. So Ohio wouldn't be part of it. So if you're talking the HUD Fair Housing poster, you're talking a federal program, so outside of the state's jurisdiction. So it wouldn't have anything to do with Ohio. It would have it would have the address of the Division of Real Estate because that's where you would submit any claims to. So you would submit it to Ohio, but as far as explanation of Ohio rules, it wouldn't be on the fair housing poster, only the Division of Real Estate. Because that's where you would submit your issues. In a real estate transaction in which you represent the seller, your duty to other parties is to That's right. Honesty and fairness. So maintain the confidentiality. Yeah, that's still your responsibility, but the responsibility to all parties is honesty and fairness. So that's probably going to come up in your test, and that's your duty to everyone. This is your duty to your client. So if someone tells you stuff that's not your client, you don't have any obligation to keep their confidentiality. But everyone, you are required to treat honestly and fairly. A disabled tenant was denied permission to install a handlebar in the shower. What law has the landlord violated? Yep, ADA. So some people said fair housing, some people said Civil Rights Act 1866. That one wouldn't apply. That's strictly race in 1866. Fair housing is going to pertain to buying the property and the sale of the property, not actually doing something to the property. So when you talk about fair housing, you're talking about the actual buying and selling of property. ADA is, being compliant inside the property, or what you do to the property, or handlebars or railings or ramps or anything like that. That would be ADA, Americans with Disability Act. So again, this is an ADA violation, not fair housing, because it had nothing to do with the sale or purchase of the property. Which court has jurisdiction over estates of the deceased?
Probate.
That's correct. That media thing got some of you at the mayor's court by throwing that in there. Yeah, probate court. Anytime someone is dead, it goes to probate court. A listing agreement is an agreement between There we go. All right. Almost everybody got one on the seller and buyer. Hopefully it was just a slip of the finger. Seller and buyer, that's an offer and a contract form. The listing agreement is the agreement to actually list the property for sale, not the actual contract to purchase the property. That's a purchase agreement. And that's what the seller and buyer both sign. The principal broker has the following duties except good job. They definitely have to oversee and direct operations, but prepare listing agreements is not one of their duties. Which approach to value is typically used for investment property of 2 to 4 family units? An easy way to think of this is, why do people usually buy 2 to 4 family units? So what do they want?
Revenue.
Well, it's an income approach. So you're right about wanting revenue, but it's about the income. How much does the property make? And you can think of it as revenue, but the actual approach is called the income approach. Cost approach, no, because that would just be on how much it costs to replace them or rebuild them. But it's the income approach is why people, what's the income that you will make on the property? And that's usually how people look at it. So that's the value. The leasehold estate that can be terminated by either party and cannot be assigned is... Oh, come on. They already gave you guys the answer. That's right. Tenancy at will. Which word or clause in a mortgage pledges real property as collateral for debt?
Accretion. Yo.
It's hypothecation.
Okay.
So, got some people that need to work on vocabulary on this one. Hypothecation. Now, ask me if you'll ever have to know that after your test. Probably not. And at the same time, hypothecation is the word or clause in a mortgage that pledges real property. So it's just a word to remember, hypothecation. If a property has an assessed value of $87,500 and the level of assessment was 35%, what is the value of the property? You're going to divide in this one. $250,000. So it's 87,500 divided by 35%. And that's how you get the number. What type of deed would a buyer of real property prefer? That's right, a general warranty deed. That is the most secure. Harvey enters into a lease where he must pay 30% of the landlord's expenses. Which type of lease did Harvey sign? Net lease. That percentage word got a bunch of you. So, yeah, a net lease. Because remember, when you talk about net lease versus percentage lease, so percentage is part of the owner's profit or the business's profit, whereas a net is where you pay part of the owner or the landlord's bills. So, that's the difference. Percentage is part of whatever your business makes, that you're going to give a percentage back to the landlord over a certain amount. If you make over a certain amount, you're going to give a percentage back to the landlord. Net is you pay part of their bills. Refusing to make loans based on the racial composition of a neighborhood is called I always get some blockbusting on here. Remember, redlining is always about loans. So redlining is only about loans because it was about loans being secured or insured, and they would not insure loans that were given in communities based on racial composition. Blockbusting is when agents would instill fear in homeowners to get them to sell by, saying that, race, different people were moving into the neighborhood, or things like that. So they would get them to sell their homes. And that was called blockbusting. Going onto the block and getting people to move out of it was blockbusting. Steering is, basically when you're selling somebody, basically what we talked about earlier. If you say anything about a neighborhood or a demographic or anything like that, it's considered steering. So just know that that's the difference there. Exclusionary zoning. Zoning laws went out a long time ago. They got around it by doing it as covenants, but zoning laws, that's been illegal for a long, long time. Creating zoning based on racial composition. Which of these is not a way an Ohio agency relationship can be legally terminated?
The salesperson.
That is correct. Anybody who hasn't answered, I just gave you the right answer. Or at least he did. Yep, salesperson. So buyer client does. So it's still an agency relationship. So if they're a client and they die, then it would still be wrong. It would be terminated. So only the salesperson. They are not part of the agreement. The purpose of the Ohio Real Estate Canons of Ethics is to oh man, I thought it was for sure make it harder to get a real estate license. An option agreement is a Yep, it's a unilateral contract. So most things can't be both a bilateral and unilateral. It means that either one party is obligated to the contract or two parties. And an option agreement is only binding to the seller. The buyer can opt out of the agreement at any time, prior to going under contract. So it is only a unilateral because it is only binding on the one side, and that is the seller side. The buyer, it is not binding to the buyer to perform if optioned. What happens to an initial offer from the buyer after a seller counters?
No longer in play.
That is true. I actually I just gained a client off of this. Their agent did not let them know that was even an option. Well, it wasn't. Actually, it wasn't this. They submitted an offer and they didn't know that they could just back out of their offer before it was accepted. So they were not happy when they found out that they could. A partially amortized note that reduces part of the principal by the time the final payment is due is often called a
Balloon.
Yep. So again, Fully amortized means that the whole loan is paid off by the end. Partially amortized means that you're only reducing part of it and that the final payment due is going to be a balloon payment or a lump sum payment. While both the mortgage deed and the mortgage note are signed by the borrower, the note is that's right, not recorded. Again, I could see why, because the bank holds the note. So I would see why that would be confusing to some. But yeah, it's not recorded. A mortgage is recorded to create a valid lien. Yes. So a mortgage, remember, it's not transferring the title. A mortgage is just recorded so that it creates a valid lien. So that way the mortgagor, or actually a mortgagee, has the ability to go after the property if payment is defaulted on. And remember, the bank is the mortgagee, the buyer is the mortgagor. When can a broker reveal confidential information about a client? Ooh, this one's got a lot of quick answers on this one.
Under subpoena.
That is correct. Let's see how many people jumped the gun and said never. Right? Yeah, you gotta be careful when you read these questions, because yes, in almost every other circumstances, it's never, unless it's under subpoena. So that's the only time that you can reveal confidential information about a client, if you are required by law to do so. What will happen if an applicant is charged with misconduct either prior to, during, or after the examination? Yep, they will be denied and they will not be able to reapply for 1 year. At what point in time must an agent give a buyer the consumer guide to agency relationship? Second showing. So you can show a property at an open house because it's considered that's considered legal. You can show buyers properties. If you start talking about their finances or anything, yes, you would have to give that to them. But as far as someone walking into an open house, you can walk them around and show them the property. It's just if you were to show them that property again, then you would have to, in this situation, you would have to actually give them a consumer guide to agency relationship. So first showing of an open house, nope. Second showing, absolutely. And if in the first showing they start to reveal confidential information, you would need to let them know that you were acting as seller subagent and that they, should not tell you those things. And then you should give them a consumer guide to agency relationship. So first substantive contact. is how they word that. A broker who deposits clients' money in the same bank account as the brokerage's operating funds is guilty of
commingling,
commingling. Good job, everybody. To be an effective property manager, a licensee must be familiar with a variety of
lease agreements,
good job, lease agreements. Net income best describes income after expenses. That's right. Gross income is before, net income is after. The act of the government taking private property for public use with just compensation is. Now, this is a tricky one. Let's see if it gets any of you.
condemnation,
Good job. It did get a few of you. Condemnation is the act. Eminent domain is the thing that gives them the right to do it. So the eminent domain gives them the right to do it. Condemnation is the act of doing it. All right. Where do we end up? Julia on top. Way to go. And Pauline with the 6 streak answer in a row. Good job. Sharonda rounding it out to 3rd. So we're going to wrap that up here. So great job, everyone. And so we made it through 50 of the 100. Remember, there are 4 categories in the national that are important. So study these 4. They are your practice of real estate, general principles of real estate, contracts, and finances. The majority of your questions in the national are going to deal in those 4 categories. So you're talking like 55 of the 80 questions that you're going to see in the national are, the principles of real estate, practice of real estate, contracts, finances. And then in the state portion, there are 2 categories that are most important. That's general rules and license laws, and then brokerage relationships. 30 of the 40 questions that you're going to see are those 2 categories. So if you study those 6 really, really well, you should have no problem with the test. That's going to be the majority of your questions that you're going to see are those 6. Yeah. Principles of real estate, practice of real estate, contracts, and finances are the national. And then on the state, you're going to do brokerage relationships and general laws and licensing rules. So those are your big topics. 30 of the 40 are general laws and licensing rules, and the brokerage relationships, that's the state. National, again, principles of real estate, practice of real estate, and contracts and finances. So you do those at a high level. That's going to be, like I said, 55 of the 80 questions on the national deal with those four. 30 of the 40 questions on the state deal with those two. So you can miss virtually every other question and still pass if you get all of those right. So if you get most of those right, you still have to get some of the other ones, but you will. So just know that those are the important ones.
Question. When it comes down to the finance one for the national, is that considering the ones that have math in it, or just like basic finance questions?
There might be some math in it, but finance typically doesn't have a lot of math in the finance portion. There will be some. So, but again, the math is fairly easy. And let me put something in the chat for you all. Let me find it real quick. So there's some math things that you can find. So there's some YouTube that goes over the math that explains it pretty well. And I will throw those in the chat here in just a moment. Let me see. Where did I put that? All right. Here we go. So there are some links of some YouTube videos that go over the Ohio. So that goes over the Ohio test. It'll give you some review questions. Like they'll go over the past test essentially. And then there are a couple for math in there. I've never tried the practice exam by PSI. I did CompuCram through Hondros. But I imagine PSI would have a good one.
Are they pretty like spot on typically, or not exactly?
You'll find that the practice exams will give you some questions you may see again. So you may see that exact question on the test, but it'll give you general. Like they're going to change up the questions every year. You might see the version that says, this is the correct answer. But then in the one that you see on the test, it'll say accept or not. So you'll feel like, oh, I just saw this one, and you'll answer it, but you'll be wrong because it was not or accept. So, you just have to be careful on how you read it if you feel like you've seen it before. So beyond that, they're usually pretty accurate as far as they're going to give you the same breakdown of the way the questions are, as far as how many, questions on the national are out of those categories, how many questions are on, because it's going to be past test. That's essentially what they're going to do, is they're just going to give you like 2020's, exam or 2021's exam. And so a lot of questions you won't see on the test, but they'll be similar.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions?
I'm good. Have a great night.
Well, you all have a great night. Thanks for participating tonight.